The discovery of pure goodness made in the last retreat seems like something not really remarkable, something obvious or natural. But actually it is very profound. It's something that may appear to be quite simple when you have the concept, have the understanding, but prior to that, it is hidden, unknown. Pure goodness is our true nature, which actually means two things combined. It is the true nature of our human self, but it's also true nature of the soul. Identity of the soul is deeper than the human, more transcendent. Human is the outer face of the soul, expression, our expression, because the soul can express itself differently. And not many people are in touch with their souls, but then again, not many people are in touch with the deeper dimension of the human consciousness as well. Pure goodness can be also seen as the bridge from the human self to the soul, as well as the bridge to our evolution into transcendence. I have realized recently that the reason why some students were struggling to evolve into pure subjectivity, to embody it fully, and to reach its final depth, is not just that they had too many human issues and they had to go through all the healing first, so the human becomes more balanced and is not pulling so much attention into personality, so that they can step into the beyond, pure subjectivity, reality, beyond the body and mind. And that is all true to some extent, but what I have realized is that their problem was, in fact, not being in touch with pure goodness. Meaning there was no bridge between the human and the soul and the beyond. Human cannot just jump right into transcendence. In fact, the human cannot transcend at all. Only the soul can. The human can transcend, but in a different way. Not in the sense of realizing universal or absolute. First, the soul has to be present. Soul is the bridge, and the nature of the soul, which intersects with the nature of the human, is pure goodness. But let's first clarify possible misunderstandings regarding this concept for those who did not follow the last retreat. Pure goodness is not about being good. Not about trying being good. Many people have this imperative to be good because of the way their conscience has developed and the way they were educated in society through school, religion, education, social ethics, the way the superego developed in the childhood, where we try to be certain way in order to gain approval, to gather different rewards. Trying to be good is a tricky thing because there is a constant struggle to assert oneself in that way or to be asserted by others. And there is a conflict with the opposite, which is being bad or not being good enough, which again can be internal. It can be an internally drawn conclusion or internally held doubt, or it can come from the feedbacks from others, a combination. Someone is trying to be good, but then again it's very difficult to determine what it actually means. How to realize this ideal in a reality that is full of challenges and contradictions. Trying to be good Though on some level it's of course, it counts. It's something that happens on the level of personality and is inherently impure. Impure not in the sense of being bad, but in the sense of just not being pure. To realize pure goodness, you need to somehow move out from that paradigm of trying to be good or trying to please others or yourself, because that is holding you back in the impure, in the tainted, in the relative, in the false. If you look at yourself struggling to be good, has been a large portion of your life, and it's quite tragic, really. There's no peace in that. There's no freedom in that. There's dissatisfaction, there's a doubt, there's frustration, and there's a fear of not being good enough. So if you want to be free, and if you want to be beyond fear, you need to step into pure goodness. Pure goodness is freedom. It's actually liberation. In fact, each time you come back to your true nature of pure goodness, you are liberated. You might still lose it. You might come out of it. But you have a choice to be free. You have a choice to be well. Because pure goodness is a place of being unconditionally well. Because good is well. But the challenge here is first to recognize pure goodness. Second is to surrender to it. The egoic self, personality. You probably have a sense of goodness inside you. Often experiencing it spontaneously, even though perhaps not very deeply, but you get a sense of it. You see, the question that philosophers were asking since ever whether human being is good or bad, or both, or neither, here can be finally answered, not philosophically, but in a real way, meaning experientially. We are good, but in a way that is beyond good and bad as it is usually conceived, perceived. And you need to recognize it. You need to go to the root of yourself. You see, some people are good or behave in such way or feel themselves in this way when there's abundance, there's a peace, they are not being challenged. But when the opposite happens, when they are being challenged, when their security is being challenged and so forth, they become bad. Not everyone, but it is common occurrence. So I want you to get out of this duality, of that superficial sense of being good, which is circumstantial, and to find the unconditional goodness. Now, I've been contemplating how to guide you into recognition of goodness. And one example, one way I discovered was by feeling, remembering, when you are spontaneously kind. It's not that you don't have to be kind in action, but you have a sense of being kind. You have this feeling of kindness. You see someone, can be human, can be not human, an animal. You see, and there's this sense of kindness. I want you to remember it or recreate it. And then trace it back to the source in yourself. And kindness is an energy directed outwardly. Goodness is, it emanates outwardly, but as such is not directed anywhere specific. It's like pure love simply is. So I want you to go to that root. Goodness, pure goodness, it emanates, includes outer reality, But above all, it includes you, meaning that goodness is actually towards yourself. But you are not directing it towards yourself. It is just you. It is already directed towards yourself. I spoke about self-love. Self-love is not the same as pure goodness, even though they belong to the same family. I've defined self-love as nothing but loving surrender to pure goodness. That is the most accurate definition of self-love. It's not that you are trying to love yourself, you are just surrendering to your true nature, which is goodness. Because here we come to another question, another matter to consider regarding that concept of being good. Are you good to yourself? Again, this area of trying to be good to oneself is pretty frustrating, if not tragic. There's a lot of confusion here, a lot of conflicts, a lot of many contradictions. What it actually means to be good to yourself. It's easy to understand what it means to be good to your body, because you take care of your health, for instance. But you can be good to your body, and bad to yourself simultaneously. Again, here we have the answer. To be good to yourself is to surrender to goodness in you, pure goodness. That is the highest definition of being good to yourself. Where do we experience pure goodness in the body? You can experience it in your heart. You can experience it in your being, or rather combination of being and heart. You can experience it in your consciousness. Eventually, you're supposed to experience it in the whole of yourself. As I mentioned, by surrendering to pure goodness, you are free, because you are well. To be free means to be well. and you have access to it. The thing is that for pure goodness to be contained, embodied, you don't need to have pure subjectivity. There's one of these many examples where spiritual path into pure subjectivity intersects. With the human awakening and completion. Pure goodness, when realized properly, is a state of pure subjectivity. So pure subjectivity allows pure goodness to be actualized in a complete way, but also pure goodness is transforming pure subjectivity, enriching it, filling it up with substance, with meaning, with truth, another truth. Pure goodness is also a shortcut to healing. Not just shortcut, it's actually what makes healing possible. How can you heal if you are not good to yourself? And you cannot be good to yourself if you have not realized pure goodness. Then being good to yourself without pure goodness, is again trying to be good to yourself, struggling, dealing with different contradictions, and never really knowing what it truly means to be good to yourself. Because you don't have a self, you see? Pure goodness is the nature. Pure goodness is actually the human self. So if you don't have it, you don't have a self. And therefore, how could you be good to yourself if there's no self to be good to? If you are dealing with different healing matters from the place of pure goodness, you'll have so much empowerment and sense of being already well. Usually when people want to heal themselves, it is because they are not well. They feel terrible. But here's the paradox. If you are not connected to that in you which is well, you cannot heal or to transmute or to transform that which is not well. Healing becomes endless, it never ends. Because the human condition is simply hopeless, cannot be solved. without pure goodness, that is. You can make an experiment if you experience different emotional suffering. And then you surrender to pure goodness, because you need to surrender to it fully. Two things happen. First, you already feel well instantaneously, and therefore there's no more such a great urgency to change things emotionally, because you are already fine. Second, the energy connected to that emotional suffering becomes profoundly affected by pure goodness and changes. Sometimes it just resolves itself, becomes freed with lower emotional frequency, and sometimes it is just transformed for the better. It's more peaceful, it's more calm, it's less suffering, in fact. There's less suffering. And if you stay with that less suffering, eventually it becomes non-suffering. If you stay with it from the place of having surrendered to pure goodness. Realization of pure goodness is human realization. It's also realization of the soul, as I mentioned, but since we have been speaking a lot on the subject of the human self, so it is human realization too. Tell me, who are you actually as a human? What is there that you can pinpoint as your human self? You feel this, you feel that, you experience many things in your thoughts and emotions, physically too. But it is actually very empty. The human is hollow. That's why transcendence, in terms of moving into the beyond, is so appealing, because human is hollow. Enlightenment, liberation, everybody wants these things because human is hollow. Not just that the human is suffering, or people are miserable, or they think all the time, they cannot stop their mind, so they live in all kinds of states of torture. Not just that, because someone who is spiritually capable, developed, can reach peace of mind. The human is less disturbing, unless one has some serious emotional issues, of course. but somehow the human is acceptable. We got disconnected. Let me continue. I was speaking about the fact that the human is hollow, hence there is this the idea of transcendence is so appealing. Even when the human is relatively at peace, let's say is emotionally okay, still it is not a comfortable place to be. Being in universal consciousness is comfortable. Being in absolute I am is comfortable. But to be in the human, what are you going to do there exactly? Where you are going to be? Of course, the human and pure subjectivity, in your case, they mix together. So you don't really know where you are exactly. But if you separate these two and make an experiment, trying to be in the human, there's nowhere to actually be. Human has no being. Has some kind of a presence that it borrows from the soul, if the soul has awakened pure subjectivity. But in himself, he does not have being. Human is empty. This is why, even when human is at peace, the idea of his transcendence is very appealing. Just leaving him behind. And here's the thing. Pure goodness is the being of the human self. The human becomes filled with substance. Of I am. And then, for the first time, human becomes well in himself. Doesn't have to go anywhere, doesn't have to transcend. He's just well. There is a type of transcendence here from within the human, where you're not running away, but more surrendering to the internal space of pure goodness within yourself. So what you are transcending is not really human consciousness. What you are transcending is human unconsciousness. Because being so confined to your personality and not having this innermost space of pure goodness is unconsciousness. You basically don't know who you are. Living your life, doing stuff, experiencing numerous things, but you have no idea who you are. Because you are not. You have not actually started to exist as true human. Therefore, realization of pure goodness is giving birth to yourself. To really understand this, you need to surrender to pure goodness. It's not enough to have sense of it. It's not enough to touch it. Now and then, you need to be absorbed in it. You need to reach samadhi in pure goodness. So there's a very specific kind of internal surrender that must happen for that realization to come to completion. I think for now I have covered everything what is necessary. You can go back to the last retreat to listen to the talks and be well, which means be good. Don't try to be good, be good. Not because you ought to be good, but because that is your true self. Be yourself.